Hello and welcome to the MKG podcast. I'm your host, Kerry. This podcast helps demand gen marketers grow their company's business through SEO, digital advertising, and analytics. To help me introduce today's guest, I have our CEO, special guest, Mike Krass, with me today. Hello, Mike.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. Today's guest talks about data and data management and storytelling. And I love this conversation because many, many moons ago, back in the day, when it was like three of us, we tried really, really hard to pull together what we called at the time the magical dashboard.
It was magical.
Yes, well, that was the idea. We wanted it to be as magical as possible. And the magic of it was that we had all these different data inputs from all the different channels we were running that filtered into one place where clients could then access all of their data in pretty charts and change the dates and have it in real time. And at the time when we were trying to do this many moons ago, it was really expensive and complicated because every instance was basically net new. It wasn't something that scaled essentially. But time's changing.
Yes, and actually before Kerry and I even knew each other, I put together a magical dashboard. It was for a client by the name of Alaska Airlines. Teasing into the Alaska Airlines dashboard was focused on media investments. So if we spend, I'm making up the numbers, $100,000 on TV ads and $50,000 on billboards, and we're going to run $200,000 worth of Facebook ads in specific markets, what is the actual output in terms of sales? So when people book seats, right? What is the output there? And, sharing that experience, that was back in 2011, I had to pull data from multiple sources, web analytics, their booking engine. I had to talk to every single media provider to get their data. It took me probably about a month just to get all the data. And then I had no idea what to do with it because I had sheet upon sheet in Excel of data. I ended up putting together some data visualizations that drew some correlations. I would not be arrogant enough to say that they were direct cause and effect reports. We presented it to a gentleman by the name of Brad Tilden. Brad Tilden is now the CEO, the chief executive of Alaska Airlines, and I guarantee he does not remember this. But I guarantee it's now 2019 when we are recording this podcast. I guarantee that Brad actually has a solution that does all this without some intern by the name of Mike putting together a whole bunch of Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, and it's really manual too. I mean, that's where the magic sort of was lost in the fact that you had to go manually contact all of the vendors, pull in all of the data. It was definitely, you just said it took you a month to pull it together. It's definitely not real time. I mean, I remember doing the same thing in pulling down data and then dropping them into Excel sheets, creating some ifs and VLOOKUPs all day long to then essentially pull together charts that would then populate. But again, you still got to go to each individual data source and pull the data. And it was time consuming. No matter how many sum ifs and VLOOKUPs you got in there, it's still time consuming.
Yeah, and as you noticed in this discussion today, I abruptly paused right there. I just came to this stopping point because I was remembering how awful of an experience it was, and how now, today, in the year of 2019, so 8 or 9 years after this initial event, we're a lot smarter as marketers, and because we have better technology in our stack, we're able to ingest data, store data, and then turn it into visualizations that are actually useful. Because the most important thing about that dashboard for Brad Tilden was, if I put more money into X, will we sell more seats on our airplane? That's all he wanted to know. And he was very polite about it, but he was not really that impressed with the work that we did. So in leading into today's guest, like I mentioned, data ingestion, storing that in either a data warehouse or a data lake so that it can be queried later and then visualized in a more automated way. It's moved us from a point of, in less than a decade, just getting the data into one place so you can even see if it's useful, to actually getting the data is pretty easy. there's quite a few steps you have to go through, but there's a lot of marketing technology and sales tech out there in our stacks that will help us do all of that data handling, processing, and management work so that we can focus on what is happening here, which market should we invest in to sell more seats on the airplanes for Alaska Airlines. Because that's ultimately what a business leader wants. They really don't care how a sausage was made. They just want to see it on their plate so that they can make decisions of whether they're going to eat it or not. Or double down in Brad's case. So if you order more sausage for the Sacramento market versus Hawaii versus Los Angeles, those are all things that business leaders today are really trying to work through.
Yeah, and I remember even putting together presentations, a few years ago where we were so stuck in the weeds that we just regurgitated, like all of our insights were essentially regurgitation of the data. The data's up, the data's down, the data's left, it's right, but there was no why behind any of it. And I think what's so powerful and special about today's guest, and who I'm going to introduce in a second, is that we actually are moving, especially as MKG, into a place where we're actually storytelling. And so today's guest is Paul Deraval, the CEO of NinjaCat. And NinjaCat is a reporting tool that aggregates your data across multiple channels, helps you monitor spend and KPIs, and then allows you to actually build PowerPoint presentations just like we do in slides or even in PowerPoint, but you only build it once with all of the charts and everything you need in there with all the data inputs behind it. And every month or week or however many times you need to update it, it automatically populates. And so you can just focus on looking at what the data is telling you. And again, going back to the executive summary of the why, you put data, you put more money here and outcomes, more business outcomes over here. And thanks to NinjaCat, we're able to do that. So let's talk to Paul and how data and storytelling became so important to him and what is happening at NinjaCat to make this such a powerful tool now. Paul, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Kerry, and thank you for those kind words.
No, thank you for a great tool. It's easy to talk about things when it's working for you.
Thanks so much.
So Paul, tell me about NinjaCat and what challenge you're out to solve for the demand gen marketers and agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started, November 2013. So I think we're rolling up on about 6 years now. When we originally started, our primary mission was to purely help agencies and media companies automate their client reporting process, but do it to a way, as we like to say, prove value through data storytelling instead of data vomit, where too often, small clients being served by agencies were given these dashboards with a bunch of meters and gauges, and it just overwhelmed them. One, they never log into them because they're busy, and that's why they hire an agency in the first place, is to just do it for them. And if that's what you're relying on as an agency to prove value, retain, and upsell your clients, one, they don't log in, which is a problem. And then two, if they do, they don't understand what they're looking at. So we came to tackle the problem, again, through this data storytelling approach of developing a platform that really lets you get to know your audience, know their appetite for data, and then deliver on a silver platter a data story in the form not only of a dashboard, but of either like a fully editable PowerPoint or a PDF that's emailed directly to them that clearly articulates what you did for them, what impact it had on their business. Did they sell more cars? Did they close more deals? And answers the questions not only, why that small or medium business should continue doing business with your agency, but why they should even consider doing more business, maybe other tactics that they should explore, or maybe, campaigns that are high performing, but limited by budget. So that's what we set out to do originally. And that's what we call our first horizon, to make sure we remain being the best in the world at helping agencies and media companies prove their value in the most effective way possible.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, Paul, we definitely chose NinjaCat because of the PowerPoint functionality. The fact that we could literally build out a PowerPoint, but then the data itself would automatically get updated was like this whole new world for us, because originally we were pulling down all of our data from all of our different resources into Excel sheets, and then trying to create all of our templates in terms of all, we'd make all these pretty pictures in Excel for all the graphs and
Yep.
then port those over into PowerPoint, and so manual and so time consuming. So once that, like, all we have to do now is fill in the insights. It's insane and incredible of how much time that has saved us, and come so far from the days of Excel and some ifs and VLOOKUPs.
Absolutely, yeah. It is crazy. I mean, we find too often certain agencies will spend 60% of their time just because it's such an important element to communicate to your clients, build that trust, and have that conversation with these visual aids. But glad we had the impact on you that you just discussed.
What's so impactful about it is that it became less about trying to get the data and aggregate the data and actually read the data and understand what's actually happening and be able to make quicker decisions.
Yep, tell a story.
And tell a story.
Turn that cold, hard data into a beautiful story, as we like to say.
Definitely. I've seen some of your PowerPoint presentations, some of your that came out of NinjaCat that are all data driven, but they are really beautiful. So is that from definitely a story standpoint, you can see the story, but is also the visual storytelling and the layout and the way that it's sort of being portrayed from a visual aspect just as important?
Yeah, absolutely. They do go hand in hand, right? Especially in 2019, I think design is a key element. Something needs to be visually appealing. You don't want to look at something that looks legacy and not appealing. I think good design also just helps you better digest that information. So it does come to both aesthetics and structure of that story. And a good report has an executive layer, then a strategic layer, and then a tactical layer where you might get into the weeds. And that executive layer, you really need to nail it there of, across all channels, what are the KPIs that you or your clients care about, and nail it on page one, because the reality is many clients might never get past page one because that's what all they care about. But maybe they are a little bit more of a data junkie and they do want to get into the tactical weeds, and you should offer that down in that lower layer of the report.
Yes, definitely. We have an appendix of all that stuff so they could dig in if they want to. And we're actually moving towards your live dashboarding tool, which is very similar to the PowerPoint, but it gives and it's still story driven, which I think is really cool. And you can really lay it out any way that you want, but the client now has the capability of changing the dates and looking at it the way that they want to look at it. And in real, quote unquote, mostly real time, it's about, I think, a 24-hour update.
Yep, and that's great that you're doing that. I mean, while I might have knocked dashboards earlier, we have found that dashboards are a critical part, especially in the sales process, as they offer that sense of comfort and transparency that they can access their data. And I think that's a huge theme we see these days in the agency world is transparency, right? What are you doing? I want access. I don't want to just wait till once a month. Maybe I'm okay with that, but I just at least want the comfort that I can log in on any given day and see what's going on with my campaigns. So glad to hear you're doing that. Our saying now is, win them with dashboards, keep them, retain them, and upsell them with a data story that you deliver on a silver platter. And that's those PowerPoints or those PDFs that you send to them.
Yes, we do that monthly and for SEO, for both digital advertising and SEO quarterly.
Awesome.
Because you do have to, we remind the client that our dashboards are there on a weekly basis, just so they know they can go look at them. But where we really provide our value and the insights of what's actually happening is in that story, as you keep reminding us, is in that monthly and quarterly report. So totally agree. So is that where NinjaCat is sort of going then, or has come to? You talked about that first iteration being for agencies, being able to basically automate PowerPoints and tell that story to now being a bit more live and transparent. What's happening now?
Yeah, so what we observed quickly on in the beginning was all these different channels of data, and one of the popular ones was call tracking. So we saw people using tools like CallRail and MarChex and Dialtech and a number of other to make sure that they can get that call attribution, right? With the increase in mobile, most people that are finding a local business, hair salon, whatever it might be, they're not filling out a form, they're just calling, right? So you need to make sure that you as a demand gen marketer can actually see where those calls are coming from. And then as an agency, same thing, so that you can better optimize the campaigns and also importantly, get credit for those calls that you're driving. So that's when we got a little bit ambitious and said, hey, can we build our own call tracking solution? So that was probably in like year two, that we built our own call tracking solution in our product. And then from there, another thing we saw was people, another challenge was, pacing, making sure that they weren't overspending a budget or underspending, or making sure that they were hitting certain KPIs, whether it was a CPA goal, phone conversion, bounce rates, whatever it might have been. So in about year three, we got ambitious and said, let's build a monitoring solution, one tool where you can set a target on any metric in any channel, and then mid-month see how you're pacing and essentially catch the smoke before the fire, or eliminate mistakes, right?
Yes.
And then we further evolved our dashboarding capabilities. And then now there's two recent things that we're super excited about. One of them is our data pipeline offering, which allows you to ingest data from the 100 plus channels that we integrate with, visualize it, report on it, monitor it in our own product, or also ship that data to wherever else you might need that data. So maybe you're still, a user of Tableau or Looker. We consider that more business intelligence, about data exploration. You might need some tools that help you explore your data. And no matter what tool you're using, you don't want to challenge with the data wrangling part. Get the data, harmonize it, clean it up so that it can then be useful for you to analyze it, do your regression analysis or any data science on it that you might work. So that's a new offering that we now have, is this data pipeline offering, which allows you to not only collect the data in our system, but now you can push it out to systems like BigQuery or Snowflake or S3, and then power your either Data Studio, Tableau, or whatever other tools you might be using for visualization. But ultimately, what this all came together as was this vision and a repositioning of our product as what we now call a universal marketing analytics platform. So to build a marketing analytics stack, right, there's different layers. You got to start with data ingestion, and there's a number of tools out there like Supermetrics and Funnel and Fivetran that you and your audience may have experimented with. And these are point solutions to grab all that data and then send it somewhere so that you can then bring your own visualization, right, like a Data Studio or a Tableau. And then there's that tracking layer for attribution, whether it's call attribution or form attribution, like your call rails, your marchecks. Then there's the other layer of data warehousing, storing all this data in like a BigQuery or an S3 or a Snowflake. Then there's another layer of monitoring, right? Like a tool, maybe like a Shape or a Sprinkler or social media monitoring. Then there's another layer, which is business intelligence, more about that data exploration. Give me the tool that's going to help me explore my data, surface some insight so I can help make a better decision. And then there's another layer, which is the client reporting, most of a pain point for the large-scale agencies and media companies, which is not about business intelligence. That's where if you try to use a Tableau, a Datarum, or some other BI tool that's focused on data exploration, you're going to fail because, again, client reporting is less about data exploration and more about data storytelling, putting together that PowerPoint. So finally here in end of 2019, that vision of building the unified marketing analytics platform, the one tool that can take over the whole stack, or the Franken stack, as we call it, has come to life. So we're super excited, and now we're just doubling down on making continued investments in each one of those areas of reporting, BI, monitoring, data warehousing, lead tracking, and data ingestion and exportation.
So I know on our side, the most important thing, well, two things, is the client reporting, obviously, like we've talked pretty heavily about, but monitoring has also saved the day many a time, trying to keep track of budgets in Excel or in Sheets in Google, is how we did it for a long time. But actually being able to have that real time in NinjaCat and not go over budget or not completely underspend. A lot of our clients need to spend their budgets by the end of a quarter so that they make sure they get at least that money, if not more, by the next quarter, is really important to stay right on track. And so that monitoring piece has become really important to us, as well as tracking our KPIs, but we mostly do that through the storytelling and the client reporting, because there's usually multiple KPIs and it's a much bigger picture. But the budget piece has been such a savior from a monitoring standpoint.
Wow, happy to hear that. Yeah, I mean, it gets harder every year with more channels, right? If you were just trying to
Yes.
one channel like Facebook, okay, you probably manage it, but these days people are running AdWords, Bing, Facebook, AdRoll, Simplify, Trade Desk, and all these other paid platform, Amazon ads, and the list goes on and on. So when you're trying to make sure across all these different, paid platforms that things are in aggregate pacing to hit the client's budget, it's a huge challenge. So glad we were able to help you with that. It sounds like we're doing a good job there.
Definitely. It was another game changer for us for sure in setting up Ninja Cat. So we're an agency. We use the client reporting and the monitoring. We've also dabbled in the calling tool. We worked with a company who needed it, and for the brief time in which we used it, I did find it incredibly useful in the fact that you can listen to the calls and that the data was there, and then it would get rolled up into a reporting in terms of how many calls they got. Uh, but these other ones are new to me, mostly because I'm not on the client. I'm assuming that these are mostly used from a client side standpoint. Is that right? Who's really the audience for more of these business intelligence and the data pipeline offering? Is that who would get the best benefit out of that? Would you
Yeah,
say?
so we found both agencies are utilizing it, and more recently this year, we started working directly with some brands and demand gen marketers to utilize our suite of tools as an alternative to, for example, a Datarama, for example.
Very
So
cool.
both the optimizing anybody that's doing any type of demand gen marketing optimization, they'll find each one of these layers helpful to them. And of course, in the agency world, we take it to that next level with that superpower of client reporting.
Really is your superpower. And then we like to consider it ours, quite
Yeah.
frankly. Uh, so something else Paul and I have in common as business owners is that we are on a path to trying to build companies that people actually want to work for.
It's my
What
favorite time.
what a concept, Paul.
Absolutely.
And it really comes down to work-life balance, right? At the end of the day, helping people have a really good life and using work to make that happen rather than the other way around, which it's been for, I would think, a very, very long time. People worked more than they had a life, and we're trying to change that.
I agree. Yeah, this is my favorite. This is my passion project more than anything is culture. I am a developer. I don't touch code anymore, and that's probably a good thing. So I think about the way that we're building business as kind of like our OS, our operating system, and consider it this open source operating system. But when we started this company, the mission we knew. I previously was fortunate enough to build another software company and get acquired. And so, lots of great things there. And then once we got acquired, some things that are like, I got a case of the Mondays, right? And why do I have a case of the Mondays? And knew when I was going to start something else that I was going to have this mission, first and foremost, to just build the type of company that everyone wishes they work for. So fortunately, came across this opportunity to build Ninja Cat and bring that as what we call our root mission, to build the type of company everyone they wishes they work for. And our belief is that as long as we make that our primary mission, I'm not talking about the problems we're solving, if we make that our primary mission and we deliver on that mission, then we're able to attract and retain the best talent. And honestly, it doesn't then matter what we do as long as we got the right people on the bus. If we need to pivot in any direction, as I like to say to our companies, if we need to pivot to selling insurance, but we truly have the best people, we'll probably, build a better insurance company than people that have been doing it for 50 years. So that is all about, just some of the fundamentals of our operating system comes to that root mission, our core values, things like, empowerment, radical transparency, everybody having access to each other's salaries, the finances, and a number of things that just build this level of trust, I'd say. But I think it becomes so much more about beliefs, right? And I shared with you our deck that was our belief system. Yes, we have our core values, but what I found to be even stronger is building out our belief system, right? What are our beliefs around purpose, authority, structure, and strategy, and innovation, and why it's powerful. I'm sure you've seen this line tonight. People believe what you believe. It drives results, right? Especially for employees, because there's a hierarchy of, your beliefs drive your thoughts drive your emotions, your emotions drive your actions, and your actions drive results. So it all really does come, back to your beliefs, the beliefs of your organization, and making sure that your team feels like, hey, I got your back, right? If you're ever in trouble, if you're having personal issues, like, we truly got your back, that's going to come back to you tenfold as an organization and get you the type of results that you need.
I mean, for us, we found, because we have similar beliefs and similar values. One of them definitely being transparency, and truly being our number one value is people first. And in that belief of really having people's backs and remembering that people are people first, and in that comes families, health, and happiness, essentially. And so when you do have people's backs, you do have those three things. What I find from the results standpoint is you have way less turnover. I mean, I remember when I would when I worked at agencies, that I would leave every 2 years or less. I have people who've been with me for 6 years.
Yep. I'm proud to say, we're 63 employees. Because of these beliefs, 6 years doing this, we only have one involuntary person who ever left the organization for a different opportunity. So, and that one kills me to this day, and I want to try to see if I can find out how to get them back. But that type of retention, just the impact on the company of being able to retain, your best and brightest is so impactful.
And then the impact that really has on clients, right? When you don't have that turnover and you make those calls to Ninja Cat, and we get the same people and we have the same account person we've been working with, that builds that trust with us. And we know that they have us and they have our history, and we've been with you guys 3 years now. So we feel very part of having impacted your product and having that, place to say, okay, here's what's working, here's where we think things could get better. And you guys taking that and actually using it. And because we've been working with the same person, there's just that level of trust built that we can bring those things to you, opposed to just being like, we're just going to leave Ninja Cat and go somewhere else and find another tool, because we keep getting a new account director. They're not hearing us. Nothing's getting changed. Nothing's going differently.
Absolutely. I love to hear that. Honestly, I wasn't even thinking of that perspective from our clients, and being able to have that same relationship with your customer success manager, for the life, hopefully, of your journey with us.
Yeah. I think about that for our clients too. Like, how much turnover there usually is at an agency, and not having that really, when we have turnover and we lose somebody and our clients had an attachment to them, it makes a big impact. It sounds like the product and your personal mission for the company actually kind of go hand in hand. There's almost like two funnels there. You're talking about clients and building that story. There's two great stories here, right? In the sense of, normally when you're telling a reporting story, you have that funnel from awareness to consideration to buying to that KPI, right? And that's similar over what you're talking about, even on the building of a company side, which I just think is just a nice.
I like that correlation.
Yeah, I could just really see it in my head as you were walking through it.
Absolutely.
But I do think these things go hand in hand, and I do think they're really important to talk about, because I think there's this shift that's sort of happening right now in our culture, in our society, where being able to work from home, being able to have more flexibility, being able to work on your terms is just becoming what people want, and they'll take that over a salary at the end of the day, which I think is just so telling. And it's just very cool to find other companies who are doing the same things that we are, and see that same need, both from a building a company side, but also from an analytics side of, seeing that need of the fact that something's so manual, and finding a way to really automate it so that you can focus on less of the doing and more of the telling.
Yeah, or as we like to say, allow your smart people to focus on the meaningful instead of the monotonous. That's too often also why agencies have a lot of churn, is because they're just doing this monotonous reporting process. And these are good, talented people, and that's just part of their role, but part that's just so monotonous, so boring, and not really using their superpowers. That if you can remove that, let them focus on the meaningful, give them more time to do insights, recommendations, next actions, call their clients, have a conversation. We love that aspect of it.
And that's really where this all needs to happen. I mean, I remember working at agencies before this, and all the reporting was just the numbers. It was just data regurgitated, and it was like, okay, but why? I found myself asking that. I was like, okay, but why is this happening, and what does this mean, and where can we make changes to make this better? And I feel like I don't have to ask those questions so much anymore, that it's just happening.
Yes, that makes me feel good.
That's what I'm here for, Paul.
You do this every day?
uh just hang out with people and make them feel good. That would be the best job ever. I'm a great cheerleader. I would be happy to do that. And as part of the podcast, yes, I want people to feel empowered by what they're doing, and I want the clients to hear the passion behind the product. I think that's really what makes people want to be part of an organization, whether it's through buying the service or the product, or whether it's actually joining the company itself. I think this is a great way to do that. So thank you, Paul. Thank you for joining me and letting me be your cheerleader.
Oh, thank you. This is my absolute pleasure. And, let the mission greater than us be to build the type of company that is just so good to its people, that it becomes, one of our greatest competitive advantages. And we hope that everyone starts to emulate it, even our competitors.
Let's do it. I'm down. Let's make it happen.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Paul. And I will continue to have my team work with your team and continue to build this awesome product that you guys got going on over there at NinjaCat.
Great. Thanks so much, Kerry. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. So that was Paul Deraval from NinjaCat. And here at MKG, we actually use NinjaCat, as I mentioned multiple times on the podcast, and find it to be a really useful tool. And I think it was really interesting, Mike, what Paul had to say about dashboards, and almost cringing when I mentioned it, because that's not what he set out to initially do, but now he's finding the value in it. Where on the flip side, we were like all about dashboards in the beginning, and now we've sort of come full circle where you do need both.
Yeah, and what I really heard from Paul during y'all's discussion was, dashboards are great. They're great for direction, providing direction, monitoring, those kind of activities. But ultimately, if you put a dashboard with no instructions, comments, or analysis in front of a business leader, if we did this to any of our clients, if we shared a dashboard with a CFO of a client like Informatica or, MariaDB or somebody like that, ultimately they would look at it and they would do one of two things. They'd either ask you, number one, what the heck is this junk? Or number two, which is the more dangerous one, they would start to analyze it themselves without any of the context. And I'm not saying that the CFOs at our business are not intelligent people. They're incredibly bright, they're incredibly intelligent, capable. They just don't have any of the context around why, right? We talked about this in the intro. Why are things happening? Why is this route doing well for Alaska Airlines versus one that's not? The whys are just not there for them because they don't have that context. And so it can be dangerous to share a dashboard with no analysis and let them basically analyze it however they want. So that's really, again, Paul mentioned this, dashboards are great directionally, but if you want to tell a stronger data story, you want to say, this is what a significant data set is telling us over a set period of time, you really do need to have it not in dashboard format, but more in PowerPoint or slides, or a format where you can type in all the details around what's happening and why it's happening. And that is something you can share with a business leader, whether that person is in the function of finance, operations, marketing, sales. That's something that they can look at and they can sink their teeth into and have a constructive discussion with you about, as opposed to them going off the range and doing their own analysis or shoving it right back in your face. Remember, that was option A, is what the heck is this junk? So it's really cool to hear Paul talk about that, especially because they have way more clients than we do because they're a software company and they're built that way. And so he's seen this really for the past 7 years. The other thing I'd like to say is I'd really like to blame Paul, because if we had NinjaCat when I was working on Alaska Airlines, I could have looked like a brilliant person to the man who is now the CEO of the whole company. And Paul wasn't there. He was 2 years late in building NinjaCat. And so, Paul, I'd really like to blame you for that and say, what the heck took you so long? And in all seriousness, happy to have it now as part of our technology stack. And I'm glad that Paul chatted with us today.
Yes, thank you, Paul. It was wonderful to have him on. To learn more about NinjaCat, visit ninjacat.io. You can schedule a demo, and they'll set you up so you can see it in real time. Thank you, Mike, for joining me. It was great to have you too.
Great to be here.